Xenos was an orphan healer so overpowered that his teammates didn't notice he was healing them and fired him for being useless. Now broke, he decides to open a black market clinic to heal powerful beast girls, but somehow all his clients start thirsting after his sausage, so he wipes them and claps them one by one. Before Xenos became a cheek-piping giga-chad, he was humiliated by his pal named Aston, who claimed he grew bored of him and decided to kick him out of his party. The whole thing came as a shocker to Xenos because he and Aston go way back, so when he called Aston out on it, he ended up getting laughed at. Aston only gave Xenos a single gold coin as severance pay and told him he was no longer needed since his party had gotten stronger. Confused, Xenos tried to explain that he had been doing plenty for the team, but Aston laughed him off and told him to scram. Before leaving, he warned Xenos never to mention being part of his party, since his origins from the slums might ruin their reputation, and with that, Xenos agreed and walked out while the others mocked him. Nearby, a slave trader tried to develop plot with an elven slave, but the girl kicked the buyer's golden jewels before running off and shot her in the foot as payback. When he tried to drag her away, she bit his finger, so he grew pissed and stabbed her in the gut. While his female colleague criticized him for stabbing the slave, Xenos, who witnessed the whole thing, showed up and questioned why the girl was stabbed, but the slave trader told him it was none of his business. When Xenos saw that the slave was bound to die, he decided to pay for her with the only coin he had, and the traders agreed without thinking twice. After the slave traders left, the slave was sure she was going to die and was convinced when she stopped feeling pain. However, to her shock, she realized that Xenos had already healed her, so she thanked him deeply. She then introduced herself as Lily and felt bad that he had spent his only coin on buying her off, but Xenos reassured her that it was fine. Meanwhile, he's dead broke. Lily's stomach growled, so he changed her outfit and took her to a restaurant. There, she happily dug into her food and learned that he had been ousted from his party. As Xenos spoke about needing a new source of income, an injured lizardkin staggered into the restaurant and begged for a glass of water. Xenos took a good look at him and could tell that he had been shot with a magic gun. The lizardkin confirmed this while he winced in pain, wishing it would stop, but after examining the wound, Xenos assured him that everything was going to be fine in no time. Though the gunshot wound is pretty deep, Xenos took care of it and restored the hand to normal, leaving the guy completely shocked. Relieved, the lizardkin thanked Xenos and gave him a handful of gold coins, then left the restaurant, promising to remember him. Shocked, Xenos realized he could get paid for healing people, just like restaurants were paid for serving meals. He quickly made up his mind to open a clinic, but since he had no license, he decided it would have to be an underground clinic. At first he was hesitant about involving Lily, but she insisted he was her master, so he gave in. Later that night, he took Lily to search for a place to use as their clinic, and ended up at an abandoned mansion in the slums. Xenos decided it was perfect, but Lily nervously warned him it might be inhabited by a wraith. Persistent, Xenos led her inside, and she used light magic to brighten the space. As they explored, a powerful wraith named Carmilla appeared and tried to attack, but Xenos easily repelled her. He flashed back to a time when he and his old party had taken down hundreds of wraiths. He then decided to apologize for invading Carmilla's privacy, hoping she might let them stay as roommates. But she attacked again, so he put her in her place, and that only pissed her off more. Triggered, she summoned more wraiths to overwhelm him, but calmed down quickly when Xenos erased them all with a single spell. Curious, she asked who he was, so Xenos simply replied that he was a healer. He then asked her to lease him a room for his clinic, and since she knew he might clap her if she refused, she didn't think twice about letting him stay. The next morning, Xenos and Lily arranged the first floor into a makeshift clinic. While Lily worried about getting customers, the lizardkin from the eatery, Zonde, showed up. He introduced himself and brought his elder sister, Zofia, who revealed an injured arm. Xenos quickly identified the decay as the effect of a special poison from a magic gun, and Zofia was impressed he could tell just by looking. Xenos explained that her poisoned hand was nearly dead and needed to be removed, and for that, he charged an outrageous price. Zonde immediately protested, but Zofia stopped him. She smirked, calling Xenos an oddball for daring to charge the leader of the lizardmen that much. Upon realizing his first official customer was a mafia boss, Xenos doubled down, explaining that he didn't plan to get rid of her arm, but to regrow a new one. He also made it clear he wouldn't heal anyone for free, even if they had Sydney Sweeteney's milkers. Zofia found it hard to believe that any healer in the slums could regrow limbs, but when she agreed to the deal, Xenos formed a scalpel out of mana and cut off the decaying arm. To spare her the pain, he numbed it with healing magic, then instantly regrew a brand new limb from scratch. Meanwhile, Carmilla was secretly hoping the surgery would fail, but her hopes went straight down the drain when Xenos pulled it off flawlessly. Impressed, Zofia told him she liked him, promised to send her people to his clinic, and even offered to pay for private treatments in the future. Later that night, Lily made tea for Xenos and Carmilla and asked how Zofia had been injured. Xenos concluded it was likely due to the ongoing feud between the lizardmen, orcs, and werewolves. Suddenly, the clinic door burst open and Linga, the werewolf leader, barged in with her wolfkin. She declared she came for Xenos' life, blaming him for healing the lizard folk, their rivals. She charged at him with an axe, but it shattered against his defense barrier. Xenos calmly sent Lily to her room and watched as the werewolves failed to land a hit. Furious, Linda ordered her men to vandalize the building and tear it apart. When Carmilla finally had enough, she appeared, ready to curse the wolves into becoming King Nisser every full moon, but Xenos stopped her. Terrified, the werewolves instantly apologized for wrecking the clinic, convinced that Xenos was some terrifying man who could make an overpowered wraith call him daddy. A few days later, an orc arrived at the clinic, telling Xenos that Lu, the head of the orcs, wanted to see him. As soon as Xenos learned that Lu had a condition that restricted her from moving, he visited the orc stronghold to examine her. When he arrived, he realized that Lu already knew about him through her underground network. After telling Xenos all that she had heard about him, she asked him to examine her to find out the cause of her confinement. Xenos scanned her, and he detected a mana stone lodged in her lower abdomen, which had a chance of blowing up at any given time. He asked her how it got into her body, and she said she mistook it for a rice ball and ate it. Disappointed, he excused himself, telling her she would be fine as long as she answered nature's call in time. But as he turned to leave, she stopped him, telling him she might explode soon. Despite her condition, her men stood by her, vowing to go down with her. Surprisingly, she tossed Xenos a key to all the fortune she had acquired over the years, demanding that he use it wisely. Xenos deliberated for a bit before hurrying back to her, but he used his scalpel to retrieve the mana stone, instantly healed her, and suppressed the explosion with his hands. Afterward, he handed the key back to Lu and told her that he believed in the law of equilibrium. Overjoyed, she assured him that she would send her men daily to his clinic. A few days later, Lily pouted when she noticed the mafia ladies had been frequenting the clinic more often. Xenos agreed with her and wondered why they kept showing up without injuries, so Carmilla teased that they all wanted his sausage. When Xenos argued that he ain't a diddler, Carmilla teased him, saying there was a high possibility the three clans would go to war for his sake. Meanwhile, Lily sulked, lamenting that she wasn't plotted enough to compete with the demi-human trio. The following day, Zofia, Linga, and Lo pulled up at the clinic at the same time with gifts, requesting that Xenos side with them while they each waged war against the other. Carmilla mocked him, saying everything was proceeding just as she had envisioned, while Lily pouted jealously. Perplexed, Xenos showed up at the Colosseum the next day to watch the clans battle it out. He informed them that he would not interrupt and told them to give it all they had until they were satisfied. So the girls agreed that the winner of the bout would get Xenos a sausage. The battle commenced, and after a couple of hours, they realized that no matter how fatal the blows they delivered were, their opponents kept getting back at. Xenos then told them that although he had agreed not to interfere in their battle, they were still his patients, and he could not bring himself to allow them to die on his watch. He explained how pointless fighting was and urged them to carry on if they felt otherwise. After all, they would still have to pay him for all the effort he had spent keeping them alive. Upon hearing his words, the girls gave up and decided to let bygones be bygones. Watching how Xenos handled everything, Lily asked him why he chose to unite them. So he told her one of his teacher's best quotes, that first-rate healers can make the world a better place. Amazed by Xenos for drastically reducing the number of patients, Lily told him she liked him, but he took it as sibling affection. A few days later, the Council Division Commander summoned Krishna, the Vice Commander, popularly known as the Iron Rose, to his private chambers. He informed her of the rumors spreading throughout the kingdom about a mediator who had managed to unite the races living in the outer territories. While such unity might have seemed noble on the surface, the commander feared that the growing alliance between the three demi-human races could one day pose a serious threat to the kingdom's hierarchical system. He explained that the kingdom's fragile balance only held because people were too busy blaming the lower classes and fighting each other to worry about bigger problems. To him, if the demi-human factions ever united, it could shatter that balance and give the people a common cause, one that might easily turn into rebellion against the crown. The division commander then ordered Krishna to investigate the mastermind and bring him to justice. At the same time, Xenos sneezed after being referred to, but the girls assumed he had caught a cold and offered him all sorts of lovely remedies to fix it, hurt by the fact that she did not have what it took to compete at the forefront. Lily stormed off. Xenos then patched up Zofia's injuries. She claimed to have sustained them during an encounter with the Iron Rose while trying to sneaking into an aristocrat's manor the previous day. Hearing about another potential partner for Xenos, Carmilla teased him, saying the Iron Rose might join his harem collection. Unbothered, Xenos assured himself that the knight had no business with him. Meanwhile, Krishna arrived in the slums and was shocked to see the demi-humans mingling freely with each other. Disguised as a peasant, she asked one of them who the mediator was, but the demi-human refused to reveal Xeno's identity, claiming they were immensely indebted to him. Angered, she pointed a magic gun at him in an attempt to threaten him, but Zofia and several other demi-humans appeared, forcing her to retreat with more questions than answers. While retreating through the forest, Krishna got lost and stumbled upon the first building she came across, which happened to be Xeno's clinic. Meeting him, she explained that she had a terrible sense of direction and requested his help to find her way back to the city. As Xenos offered to guide her, Lily stepped outside to check on him, and Krishna noticed her pointed ears, instantly realizing she was not human. Without wasting a moment, she pulled out her magic gun and shot Xenos, declaring she had finally found the one she was looking for. While Lily tried to explain to Krishna that she was mistaken about Xenos, he casually brushed off the effects of the shot. Considering Lily's explanation about Xenos rescuing her from slave traders, Krishna apologized for misjudging him. Curious, she asked how on earth he managed to walk out of her attack like it was pixie dust. Xenos explained that he had used a simple defensive spell to protect himself, but she found that hard to believe since defensive magic normally shouldn't be capable of stopping magic guns, unless of course he was that guy. Krishna introduced herself and told them about the mission she had been sent on, demanding their cooperation. Realizing he was her target, Xenos tried to sway her, saying maybe the so-called mediator might want to keep a low profile, but Krishna cut him off, saying someone with that much power could easily threaten the nation itself, and that she had to make sure she captured him first. She randomly noticed an extra bed in the clinic and declared she would be spending the night there. For some reason, Lily got jealous and forced Xenos to give her some Oni-chan treatment before falling asleep. Carmilla, whom Krishna apparently could not see, swung by to tease Xenos, which made the Iron Rose suspicious about what was really going on. Xenos realized he had to stay as chill as Yagami Light if he didn't want his cover blown. Not long after Lily fell asleep, Krishna tried to milk information out of Xenos about the slave traders he had rescued Lily from, but he had nothing useful to give. On her own, she linked the slave traders to the underground healer she had heard about, the one capable of regenerating limbs. She ruled Xenos out, believing he was already a prodigy at defense magic. Xenos asked why she had so much beef with the slums, and she explained that her mother had been unalived while trying to play Mother Teresa to starving people in the slums years ago. She told him she had decided that very day to become an invincible hero, strong enough to deliver justice to the criminals of the slums, so no one else would suffer the same tragedy. Her determination had earned her the title of youngest vice commander in the history of the Royal Knights, and she wasn't ready to stop. She explained that her Iron Rose nickname came from the fact that her face had been like an iron mask ever since that day, as she hadn't smiled once. The following morning, after Krishna left, Zofia, who had now become a regular thanks to her constant injuries, showed up for treatment. Not long after, Krishna appeared again, claiming she had gotten lost. Zofia, who had been racking up odds against her for a while, recognized the Iron Rose immediately and went into combat mode. Krishna did the same. Although Lily tried to explain that Zofia also had a list and had shown up at the clinic for the same reason, Krishna didn't buy it. She demanded to know the location of the mediator, the one who had helped regenerate Zofia's arms. The very arms Krishna clearly remembered destroying. Not wanting to take another obvious L, Zofia switched tactics and went for words instead. She gaslit Krishna about her shallow mindset of blaming the slums for all the kingdom's evil. Krishna was about to hand her another brand new L when Xenos stepped in. He casually said there was no need for Krishna to get violent because he was the mediator. She flat out denied it, saying the mediator was supposed to be a master of healing magic, and it was impossible for someone to wield 2 schools of magic at such a high level. Xenos shrugged it off, saying that while calling him a master was flattering, he liked to think of himself as just a normal magician. He added that both healing and defense magic were about amplifying the body's natural functions, so they were basically the same thing. Krishna refused to believe him, but concluded that he had chosen to side with the mediator and the demi-humans, so she left. The following morning, Krishna paid a visit to Lord Calendar, a high noble in the land, and discussed the recent operations of thieves in the area. She demanded that he increase the kingdom's security while she inspected the palace. During her inspection, she noticed something strange about the uneven distribution of soldiers and decided to excuse herself to investigate further. Toward the rear of the palace, she stumbled into a dungeon and was shocked to see a group of slaves being held captive. She immediately realized that Lord Calendar was up to something sinister. Before she could act, he appeared and shot her with a magic gun, fatally wounding her. As he prepared to finish the job, Zofia and Xenos appeared out of nowhere to stop him. Flustered, Lord Calendar fired at them, but none of his shots pierced through Xeno's defensive magic. Realizing how hopeless the situation was, he begged for mercy, but Xenos coldly denied him, reminding him that he had shown neither them nor the slaves any mercy. He then pointed a magic gun at Lord Calendar and fired, intentionally limiting the impact so it would not unalive him. Krishna, who had lost an arm and now had a hole in her stomach from the attack, was ready to say her goodbyes when Xenos approached her. He used his magic to restore her, leaving her shaken and wondering who he truly was. Knowing how much Krishna craved validation as a hero, Xenos let her take the credit for rescuing the slaves. Realizing things would become troublesome if the royal knights discovered what had really happened, Xenos and Zofia prepared to leave. But before they could go, Krishna stopped them and asked why they had come to save her. Xenos casually replied that she still had too many unpaid bills, and he intended to keep her alive until she paid him back in full. Hearing this, Krishna smiled for the first time in years. One time, while walking through the slums with Lily, Xenos recounted how he met Aston, who had recruited him into this party as nothing more than a pushover. Aston simply bossed Xenos around, never realizing that Xenos was the one quietly healing their wounds. He never once appreciated Xenos' efforts, and he eventually kicked him out of the party. Meanwhile, the Golden Phoenix party took on a job under Fennel, one of the 7 nobles, to clear out a cave filled with magic beasts. Thinking it would be a breeze, they went in overconfident, but the fight quickly turned into a nightmare. Beaten and battered, they scrambled out of the cave. Outside, Aston blamed his team for their poor performance, but one member called him out for being a disgusting hypocrite. Another suggested that maybe Xenos had secretly been healing them all along, but Aston didn't want to believe it, so he insisted that a true healer would never come from the slums. Despite that, they decided to recruit a proper healer from the city before trying again. Time passed, and they recruited Ummin, a newly licensed healer, as their support. Aston explained that the plan was to slay the beasts and make a scarf out of their fur as a birthday gift for Fennel's daughter. With renewed determination, the Golden Phoenix party re-entered the cave to face the fire foxes. The foxes charged, and in the chaos, their magic caster was struck by flames. Ummin quickly healed him, saving his life, while Aston tried to rally the party. Despite her efforts, their progress was futile, and they barely escaped again. Outside, Aston lashed out at Guile, blaming his defensive spell, but Ummin shut him down, saying Guile's shield was the reason their teammate wasn't already dead. When Aston demanded she heal him fully, she snapped, saying he needed the royal hospital, since only elite healers or saints could restore such heavy damage. That was when it hit Aston. Ever since he had kicked Xenos out, they had been taking heavier damage and struggling more with every mission. He wondered if Xenos was truly on the level of the elite healers Ummin spoke of, and asked her if someone could wield such powerful healing magic without a license. Suspicious, she asked him why he was bringing that up, but Aston kept quiet. Later, Fennel's butler arrived to terminate their contract, calling them useless for failing their mission. Aston begged for another chance, lying that their failure was because Xenos, a former party member, had betrayed them. He even swore on his life, but the butler was unmoved, pointing out that Charlotte's birthday had already passed, and the noble had lost faith in them. Aston insisted they could still complete the quest if given one more opportunity, promising to recruit new blood to fill the gaps. After the butler left, Aston admitted to his team that he planned to recruit Xenos again, though he never wanted to admit their success depended on Xenos. He figured keeping him around as a lucky charm would be enough until the party recovered its reputation. Determined, they set out in search of him. Aston even suggested hiring one of the 3 demi-human bosses to boost their strength. Soon, they arrived at Zofia's tent. Seeing she was in a hurry, Aston tried to act like a hotshot while pitching his request. But as soon as she learned he was the fool who had kicked Xenos out, she burst into laughter, calling him dumb. Offended, Aston tried to draw his blade against her, but she told him Xenos had better things to do. Aston overstepped his boundary as he tried proving himself to her, but she glared at him and reminded him who she was. Pissed, he walked out and went to Linga's camp, the Wolfkin head, who was more blunt than the rest. Insulted Aston after learning he was the one who kicked Xenos out. He showed a bit of aggression, and she nearly made him soil himself. Lastly, they visited Lou, and after hearing her say the same thing, Aston stopped Guile from speaking back to her. and they walked out of the territory. Outside, Aston coped hard as he struggled to believe Xenos had raised all the baddies, gatekeeping them for himself alone. He then concluded that the boy he once welcomed to his party simply shared the same name as the slum's doctor. Suddenly, he spotted Xenos walking with Lily around town, so he called out to him and tried acting all smug, thinking Xenos would be curious about him. But Xenos simply ignored him. Embarrassed, Aston called out again, saying he was looking for him and wanted him to join the team. To his surprise, Xenos turned him down, saying there was no way he would join them after being treated badly and not paid. Still full of himself, Aston repeated himself like a radio broadcast, so Xenos offered to join them for a quest whenever he was free, but on the condition that they paid him for every healing. He taxed them so high that Aston yelled at him, asking who he thought he was, thinking Xenos didn't have a place around. To his surprise, many demi-humans showed up, greeting Xenos casually, worried about the noisy red-haired. After hearing enough of his ramblings, Xenos turned down Aston's offer and walked away. Pissed, Aston drew his weapon and tried to attack him, but Krishna shot his weapon off. Surprised, Xenos asked Krishna what brought her to the slums, and she told him that her sausage radar went off just as he passed by. Unable to fathom how Xenos kept bagging baddies, Aston struggled to his feet and blamed Guile for coercing him to attack Xenos, then stormed off. Later, the trio of demi-human bosses met at the underground clinic and informed Xenos that his former party members had come looking for him. They found it odd that their men had lost the party members' trail, so they hoped Aston and the rest weren't involved with the underground guild. It was a guide that handled illegal tasks the demi-human gangs didn't trifle with. Xenos and Carmilla weren't troubled because they believed Aston didn't have the finances to employ underground guild members in carrying out his wishes. Zofia, on the other hand, informed them about the guide, a mysterious person who was willing to carry out tasks without pay. Later that night, Lily made tea for Xenos after seeing that he couldn't sleep. She stroked his hair to help him drift off, but she ended up falling asleep, so he carried her inside. In the living room, Carmilla joined him for tea and asked how he had managed to learn sorcery in the slums. He opened up about trying to revive the dead before his teacher smacked him for it. The old chick corrected him, saying that back in her day, there used to be a thing called artificial life, which was the sorcery to create golems. Curious about what Carmilla was up to 300 years ago, Xenos asked her, but as usual, she brushed the subject away. Suddenly, tremors echoed around the house, and Carmilla deduced they came from the slums. She flew out of the mansion and saw a golem destroying the slums. Minutes earlier, Aston had met with someone from the underground guild who told him he would not need to pay for his services. He hired the guide for revenge, but the guide only agreed after asking for the reason. Aston explained everything, and the guide accepted the job. He revealed a relic he was working on, calling it the perfect chance to test it. Hours passed, and Xenos headed to the slums after discovering the cause of the tremors. As Carmilla wondered how an ancient relic had ended up in the current era, the demi-human bosses arrived to inform Xenos of the incident. They told him that many of their beastkin were hurt badly, and he briefed them on what the golem was. Xenos learned that the monster had come from deep within the slums, and he wondered if it came from the underground guild. He quickly tossed the thought aside and ordered the girls to gather all the injured in one spot. Elsewhere, the guide watched the golem rampage through the town and noted that it was not as mobile as he had anticipated. He eagerly awaited Xenos' reaction when his admirers started dropping one by one. After gathering the injured in a safe place, Xenos told Carmilla to leave the vicinity, then cast high heal on them. He patched them up one by one, and after a lot of effort, Xenos finally complained, saying he was pissed at the mastermind. The guide, watching Xenos heal everybody, commended him for surpassing his expectations. He noted that if Xenos did not stop the golem, he would never find a solution to their problems. After a long effort getting all the injured back in shape, Xenos asked Carmilla if the golem would return again, but she told him that artificial life would not stop until it had fulfilled its orders. She found it strange that someone had obtained such a high-purity magic stone, which should have been consumed during the Demi-Humans' War. About 300 years ago, during the reign of the Demon Lord, such stones had only existed in the southern part of his castle. Fed up, Xenos and the girls decided to take down the golem. Carmilla instructed them to destroy the magic stone at its core. They approached, and Xenos acted as support for the girls. He buffed their stats, boosting their agility, strength, and impact. They tore into it and easily broke it apart, but it regenerated instantly and smacked Linga aside like a pesky fly. To their shock, she returned fully recovered. After analyzing the golem and supporting the girls, Xenos ordered them to cripple its legs. Suddenly, it collapsed toward a young girl, and as Xenos rushed in to save her, the golem shocked everyone by choosing to protect the young girl instead. The sudden turn of events rattled the guide, who anticipated Xenos making one final decision. Xenos, however, scanned the golem and told Carmilla that the mastermind must have attempted to create life with an imperfect magic stone. Through his analysis, he deduced that Aston was inside the golem, watching Xenos work. The guide noted that fusing an imperfect magic stone with a simpleton was the perfect way to create a golem. He wondered how Xenos would deal with the situation now that he had uncovered the truth. Back in the slums, Xenos told the girls to head home so he could face the golem alone. At first they insisted on helping him, but eventually they listened and withdrew. Before leaving, Carmilla told him she would have tea waiting for him. Left alone, Xenos tried talking some sense into Aston, hoping some of his humanity remained, but after sensing nothing but rage, he cut the golem open and saw Aston being used as the core. He told Aston it would be the last time they would see each other, and with one strike, he slashed him down, or so it seemed. The guide was at first shocked after witnessing Xenos use his blade on Aston without hesitation, but then he noticed Xenos healing and striking Aston repeatedly. Xenos was so precise that he cut away the parts fused with the magic stone while healing the bits of flesh that remained. Before delivering the final blow, Xenos told Aston that the world would be better off without him, but he would save him for 3 reasons. First, he planned to collect his debt from Aston's collaborator, which meant Aston would have to reveal who put him up to the act. Second, Aston had once taken him out of the slums and given him a bit of severance pay on a whim. It was that single gold coin that allowed him to save Lily and start the underground clinic. The last reason was that it was his duty as a healer to save lives. With that, Xenos struck the core and freed Aston. Afterward, Aston admitted how amazing Xenos was and wondered if saving him had been his way of enacting vengeance. Aston then apologized after experiencing what it felt like to use people. To his surprise, Xenos told him to stop because he had to hit him. He buffed his strength and told Aston that the reason he had kept him alive was that he would not feel any better slutting him if he were not conscious. Aston tried asking for a break, but Xenos insists on feeding him freshly made punches as breakfast. Later that morning, alongside having a newly disfigured face, Aston got charged with many crimes, but while he feared ending up like Diddy, Krishna then told him that Xenos had taken his sword and given him severance pay. So when Aston saw the gold coin in his hands, he cried like he just bagged Sydney Sweeney. On the way back to the clinic, Xenos ran into the girls and they carried him home, saying it was only fair after all the times he had helped them. Meanwhile, the guide went into hiding, noting that he would cross paths with Xenos again someday, and he would not forget him. When Xenos reached the clinic, he found Carmilla and Lily waiting for him. Lily explained that Carmilla had been floating anxiously around the house, worried about him, though Carmilla eagerly claimed Lily was lying. Unlike Carmilla, Lily openly admitted that she was worried. She then served Xenos a cup of tea and welcomed him home. In response, Xenos told them he was back. The following day, Krishna informed Xenos that she had confirmed the mastermind behind the golem attack was an individual who called himself the Guide, but she hadn't been able to pinpoint his whereabouts. Zofia added what she knew, saying he had recently started visiting the underground guild and always moved alone. Lou pointed out that questioning people only went so far, and Krishna concluded that the guide wouldn't show up for a while since the royal guards were on his trail. The demi-humans, however, speculated he would resurface sooner or later, believing he still had schemes in motion and ties buried deeper in the underworld. Shocked, Krishna told them not to throw around wild guesses, unlike her, whose deductions came from proper investigation and experience. Realizing things were getting tense, Xenos paused the conversation. Seeing Krishna sitting apart from the others, he told them to stop talking across the room. Defensively, Krishna explained that she couldn't be seen with them because of her position as a knight. Offended, the demi-humans snapped back that they didn't want her at their table anyway. Fed up with their constant bickering, Xenos shoved them all out of the clinic and announced he was taking the day off because he was tired. Shortly after they left, Lily approached him with an idea, hoping to convince him to visit the hot springs. But before she could finish, Zofia barged in and asked him first. He agreed, and right after he stepped out, Linga and Lou made the same request. Even the Iron Rose herself showed up later, demanding the same thing. When they were gone, Xenos asked Lily what she had wanted to say, but she snapped at him not to bother. Carmilla, who had been watching the whole time in amusement, appeared and informed him that she would be joining them at the hot springs. Later that evening, Xenos unwound in the hot bath, only for Zofia to casually appear. She explained that she had put up a maintenance sign to keep other men from entering. She slid into the water and admitted her underlings had noticed she had been acting different lately. Xenos agreed, and as they talked, he noticed the distance between them had shrunk 8 mere millimeters, unlike his sausage, which was already ready for action. Seeing that Xenos hadn't lowered his guard, Zofia tried to claim his V-card, but Linga showed up. She tried to pounce on Xenos to help him with his throbbing saber, but Zofia blocked her, and the two began fighting over who would get pumped and clapped all night. In the middle of it, Lo rose dramatically from the water, revealing her full glory and plots for him to feast his eyes on. As the trio wrestled for their turn, Krishna appeared and attempted to scold them, but quickly got pulled into their chaos. Fed up, Xenos finally shouted at them to go to the women's bath, and they reluctantly obeyed. Meanwhile, in the women's bath, spotted the odd group baiting together and noticed Lily sulking in envy of the older women. When Lily joined them, Carmilla appeared and teased her, saying that bigger isn't always better, unlike knowing how to actually satisfy a man. She kept teasing Lily until realized Carmilla was a wraith and attempted to exorcise her. Panicking, Carmilla fled straight into Xeno's bath, dropping her towel in the process. After their bath, they had a feast, though Krishna sadly ate alone at a separate table. Later that night, after the others had drunk themselves to sleep, Xenos joined Carmilla, looking exhausted, and told her how the girls had been playing games just to get a chance to have a whiff of his sausage. He then wondered what the point of time off was if he still ended up stressed, but Carmilla advised him to enjoy these lively moments since she believed he would soon be drawn into more complicated matters. Changing the subject, Xenos learned that Carmilla could move around by possessing objects she was attached to. She showed him her staff, which Lily had brought over to the inn. Curious, he asked how she had looked when she was alive, but Carmilla brushed off the question and poured him a drink instead. The following morning, an explosion shook one of the rooms, and Min rushed in to tend to the injured man. She discovered that fire magic stones had exploded while he was trying to cook, leaving him badly burned. She tried healing him, but admitted that with her level of skill, it would take several hours for his wounds to mend, and he might never be able to properly hold a knife again. Suddenly, Xenos arrived, demanding to know what had happened. After explained, she asked him to help carry the man to a nearby Royal Hospital branch. To her surprise, Xenos said there was no need, then casually healed the man before leaving with Lily. Stunned, classified his skill as being on the level of an elite healer. Back at her station, she reported the incident to Dr. Becker, who remarked that people like Xenos were so rare that the government would likely want him as a national asset. At first, he dismissed the matter, but when mentioned Xenos' blackie overcoat, Becker immediately became interested and deduced that Xenos must be in the slums. Later, Zophia's brother brought Becker, disguised as a peasant, over to Xenos, pretending that he had coughed up blood before collapsing. Xenos examined him and quickly realized that Becker had red lung. Alarmed, he told Lily to step back to avoid infection, noting that the pandemic had been eradicated years ago thanks to a cure, yet here it was in another form. To his shock, Becker sat up and praised Xenos for recognizing the illness so quickly. He revealed himself as an elite healer from the Royal Hospital. But before he could say more, stormed into the clinic, furious at Becker for enduring himself just to track Xenos down. Becker then calmly took an antidote and explained that he had ingested a drug that mimicked the symptoms of red lung. Xenos wondered where he could have gotten such an antidote, knowing only one person had ever had access to it. Then it dawned on him that Becker was the very doctor who had eradicated the red lung pandemic. When Becker noticed Xenos' black coat, he learned it once belonged to Xenos' unnamed master. After a moment of thought, Becker asked Xenos if he would be willing to work at the Royal Hospital, explaining that they were facing a serious problem. Suddenly, the demi-human trio stormed in after seeing the flag above the clinic turn red, signaling an emergency. They gate-kept Xenos and threatened Becker, assuming he had picked a fight inside the clinic. Unbothered and even impressed by their unity, Becker praised Xenos for uniting the clans. He then offered Xenos a deal. Xenos agreed, saying he wanted to be on Becker's good side now that the royals were already aware of his location. He also considered Becker trustworthy, since he had once freely given vaccines during the red lung crisis. Finally, Xenos admitted he wanted to know more about his master, since Becker had been familiar with him. With that, they struck a deal. Xenos arrived at the Royal Hospital dressed in the royal outfit and followed Becker to his office, where Becker confirmed that his identity as the underground healer would remain safe. From then on, he would go by the name Xeno, Becker's apprentice. With Becker himself accountable for any of his actions, they got down to business, discussing the ongoing case of missing people. After their meeting, Xenos returned to his dorm and found Lily waiting for him, registered on paper as his little sister. He thanked for bringing her over. Once left, Lily immediately acted hella sus by role-playing as a housewife. Puzzled, Xenos asked where she had learned that only for Carmilla to appear and proudly reveal herself as the great teacher. Seeing her inside the hospital, Xenos warned Carmilla that she could easily be exorcised or spotted by one of the elite healers. She brushed his warning off, muttering to herself that only a few people in the world possessed his level of healing magic. Later, during lunch, explained that to get a healer's license, Xenos needed to graduate from a preparatory school. After that, he could either work at a Royal Hospital branch get an adventurer's license, or choose to serve nobles or the military. She also explained the healer ranking system, which left Zenos struggling to process all the information. Quickly changing the subject, he asked her about the missing people. She told him about Alfred, an advanced healer and deputy head of the laboratory, who had mysteriously vanished. Alfred was one of the key contributors in developing the cure for red lung. When Zenos asked if she had any leads, she was about to answer when Professor Goldran, the vice director of the Royal Hospital and a Class 7 advanced healer, arrived with a large entourage. Omen quietly explained how the hospital had shifted its focus since Goldran took power, prioritizing the wealthy while neglecting the commoners. Backed by powerful nobles, Goldran was untouchable. Zenos immediately decided to stay clear of him, but Omen shocked him by suggesting Goldran might be connected to Alfred's disappearance. She detailed how Alfred had been loaned to Goldran's lab, only to vanish a month later. Her strategy was for Zenos to make a name for himself so that Goldran would take notice and attempt to recruit him. Zenos admitted he didn't think much of himself, saying his social status would just make things harder. Omen was shocked since he had no clue how amazing his skills actually were, but before she could say more, Wembley, one of Goldran's cocky students, showed up. He bragged about his faction, then spotted Zenos and instantly recognized him as Becker's new apprentice. With a smug grin, he walked off, leaving an annoying air behind him. During one lecture, Zenos reflected on his younger days, recalling how his master had drilled the principles of healing magic into both him and Veritra, ensuring they could recite the classifications of healers by heart. In class, the lecturer gave a detailed breakdown of healing magic. When the topic shifted to the undead, Zenos immediately thought of Carmilla, especially when the lecturer emphasized that her type of spirit was extremely dangerous and that students should run if they ever encountered one. To lighten the air, the lecturer asked if anyone had ever exorcised an undead. Wembley proudly declared he had taken down 30 and then tried to rub his achievement in Zenos' face. Zenos played along, casually scaling Wembley's success down to his level, only to backfire by accidentally scaling himself way ahead. During the next lecture, Wembley sat beside him, and when asked to draw a magic circle for the class, Wembley eagerly showed off his work. The lecturer immediately attempted to recruit him, but Wembley smugly announced that he already belonged to Goldran. He then challenged Zenos to prove himself, so Zenos drew an impossibly detailed magic circle. At first, Wembley laughed, but when he saw the lecturer staring at it in awe, his mood shifted to rage. Meanwhile, one of the staff reported Zenos' supposed achievement to Goldran. Coincidentally, Goldran received word of multiple undead at a graveyard, so he made sure Zenos was involved in the mission to take them out, to see if he really lived up to his claims. Later at dinner, Zenos told Lily and Carmilla that he had been tasked with clearing the undead at a church graveyard. He noticed Carmilla didn't look bothered at all. That night, Wembley led a group of students to the graveyard to exorcise the ghosts, but he nearly soiled his pants. Thankfully, Zenos cleared the area, but Wembley quickly claimed the credit and swore he would never accept Zenos working under Goldran. To his surprise, Zenos didn't argue. Instead, he told everyone they weren't done with the undead. Right after that, a zombie king appeared, and the other students begged Wembley to handle it. The poor boy, who had been faking it all along, started sweating buckets as he realized his end was near. He threw his strongest spell at the creature, but it regenerated instantly. Zenos then let him try again, and as expected, Wembley got folded like last Saturday's laundry. As the monster grabbed him and prepared to gobble him up, Wembley finally begged for help. Zenos stepped in and used healing magic to take out the zombie king. After being rescued, Wembley tried to play it cool like he didn't just lose all his aura points seconds ago. Zenos then recalled being told that the undead were usually drawn by a more powerful spirit of their kind. He thought about it while Omen and Wembley bickered back and forth, and at the same time, Carmilla sneezed after being referred to. When Zenos returned to his dorm, he told Carmilla about his findings that the undead were being drawn to her. She asked if he was going to kick her out, but he surprised her by saying she should stay by his side. Lily, of course, immediately fantasized about being told the same thing. Carmilla, meanwhile, vowed to continue being a nuisance. Back at school, Wembley, always chasing glory, surprisingly confessed to his supervisor that Zenos had nearly broken under the heavy lifting in their last mission. After leaving, he angrily declared that he was finally even with Zenos. Later, Becker met with Zenos and congratulated him. Because Goldran seemed interested in him, with step 1 complete, Becker told him to keep impressing Goldran. Zenos, seeing how much more work there was to do, asked why Goldran ranked higher than him if Becker was already in a light. Becker explained that in their country, politics mattered more than titles. Not long after, Goldran called for a meeting with Zenos. When Zenos showed up, he quickly learned just how much influence healers had in the kingdom. Goldran laid out his ambition, which was to climb into the ruling class, so he'd have different baddies drooling after him. He asked Xenos to reproduce the magic circle he had drawn in class. Goldran's second secretary handed Xenos a sheet of paper for the test. Xenos sketched the circle without effort and then asked Goldran what his aim was. Goldran replied that he wanted to see how deep Xenos' knowledge really went. After studying the diagram, he explained that there were many different schools of thought behind magic circle design. If Xenos wanted to work under him, he would need to prove himself not just capable, but legitimate. With that, Goldran praised his work and told him he could start in the lab the following day. The next day, Wembley welcomed Xenos into the group while acting like his senior. He laid out a bunch of rules and made it clear that Xenos got the position thanks to his recommendation. Wembley didn't hide the fact that he planned to use Xenos to climb the ranks. Xenos soon learned that Wembley was actually the lowest ranked member of Goldran's entourage, and that Goldran often liked visiting patients with his students. Minutes later, they entered a patient's ward. Curious, Xenos moved closer to watch how Goldran healed. He was stunned when he saw Goldran siphoning the life force of his students to treat the patient. Xenos quietly stepped back in line, and Wembley filled him in, saying this was one reason Goldran had so many loyal followers. Xenos asked Wembley about a Fred, but Wembley admitted he wasn't a fan. After pushing further, Xenos learned a Fred had once been invited to dinner like Goldran's other favorites, but vanished soon after. To Wembley, that invite was basically a guaranteed future spot at Goldran's side, and he was clearly jealous. Xenos took all of this in quietly, then reported back to Becker. Becker thanked him for his efforts so far and asked him to become one of Goldran's favorites and secure an invite to one of those dinner parties. In return, Becker promised extra payment and guaranteed that Xenos' underground work would stay safe. Xenos sighed and agreed, but made Becker promise that, no matter how things turned out, he'd tell him about his teacher. Becker agreed, and as he stood up, a handful of coins of different values spilled onto the floor. He asked Xenos which coin he would pick up first, and then asked if all lives were equal. Before Xenos could respond, Omen burst in and dragged Becker away, scolding him for being almost late to his meeting. Meanwhile, Linga showed up at the underground clinic just to get a whiff of Xenos' scent. To her surprise, she ran into Zofia, who already had a head start and was busy cleaning. Lou then busted through the clinic's door, loudly announcing her great idea. Within minutes, the trio ended up cleaning the entire place together. The next day, Wembley bragged about being trusted with taking care of Goldran's dog, while he kept glazing Goldran non-stop. He also told Xenos that Goldran was meeting with the 7 major nobles. From the way he spoke, it was clear Wembley dreamed of being promoted to a luxurious life with lots of baddies to clap. Xenos confronted him about forgetting the basic purpose of being a healer, but Wembley brushed it off, saying healing magic wasn't as reliable as money and power. Out of nowhere, a drunk bozo named Bonds staggered over and spoke ill of the mutt. As he stumbled back inside, Wembley explained that the man was Goldran's first secretary, who was someone who did nothing but drink all day. Suddenly, Bonds tossed Wembley a bottle of wine. Wembley fumbled, failed to catch it, and it shattered on the ground near him. Startled, the dog bolted into the street and got trampled by a carriage. Panicking, Wembley cast his best healing magic on the poor thing, but it wasn't enough. He froze. Xenos calmly stepped in and healed the dog completely without even chanting. For once, Wembley shut his mouth, stunned by the massive gap between them. Xenos then picked up the dog to find a place for it to rest, and Wembley trailed behind him like a lackey. Later that evening, when Xenos returned to his room, he saw Omen waiting outside. She asked him to take a walk with her. As they strolled away from the dorm, she apologized for not being capable enough to handle the task Becker had given him. Xenos was surprised she called him all the way out just for that. He told her not to worry about it and reminded her he was getting paid anyway. To ease her stress, he added that thanks to Becker, he had the chance to see the Royal Hospital and learn more about his teacher, so he had a lot to gain from all this. Relieved, Omen told him to call on her if he ever needed anything. She then asked what kind of person his teacher was. Xenos explained that although his master looked shady, he was the one who taught him how to read, write, and everything else he knew. He admitted he owed his life to his master. Omen related to him, saying his story reminded her of her and Becker. Becker was her mother's younger brother and had mentored her closely when she wanted to become a healer, which was why she now looked after him. Although Becker had been guiding her, Omen confessed she felt like her research was boring and wasn't getting anywhere. Xenos encouraged her, saying the most important things in life often turned out to be the boring ones. With her spirits lifted, she thanked him for cheering her up, even though she originally came to apologize. He told her it was best to rely on others sometimes. Then he joked about how he couldn't even get out of bed on his own. From the shadows, Carmilla laughed, calling Omen another prospective wife. When they returned to the dorm, Wembley came running up and practically begged Xenos for help. After meeting with Fennel, one of the 7 nobles, Goldran returned to his office looking troubled. He recalled Fennel telling him about his daughter's condition, since she had developed a rash on her face that kept growing bigger over time. Goldran suspected it was a case of odd face and concluded it would leave a scar after surgery. Though the scar could be erased using health transfer magic with enough donors, Fennel's daughter didn't allow a bunch of strangers to see her face. Worried that he'd only have 2 assistants at best during the operation, Goldran left his office to check on his dog. On his way, he ran into Bonds, who told him the mutt had been run over. Goldran lost it immediately, but Bonds calmed him down, assuring him he wasn't responsible and that the dog had been healed. Goldran rushed to see for himself and was stunned to find the dog completely healed. Meanwhile, Wembley was pleading with Xenos to help him since he had been tasked with healing Charlotte, Fennel's daughter, who suffered from modded face. He complained that he didn't want to screw up her face and leave scars. Otherwise, he'd be shark food. Omen wondered why Wembley was picked in the first place, and after giving him a cold stare, Wembley confessed that he had taken credit for healing Goldran's dog. Disappointed as always, Omen asked why he didn't tell the truth, but Wembley explained that if the second secretary ever found out he was a fraud, he'd be done for. Desperate, he begged Xenos for help, even calling him Big Bro. Lily walked in with tea, and when Wembley complimented her, she quickly shot back that she belonged to Xenos. Confused and wondering if the siblings swung that way, Wembley awkwardly called her his little sister too. Days later, Wembley and Xenos followed Goldran to Fennel's mansion after a sudden summons. Fennel explained that Charlotte was refusing surgery and had locked herself in her room, saying she didn't want scars on her face. He believed Goldran could perform the surgery without leaving a mark, so he begged him to convince her. Moments later, they walked to her door. Fennel tried convincing Charlotte to accept the surgery, but failed miserably. Even Goldran gave it a shot, but the spoiled rich girl vowed not to let a blade touch her skin. While the adults struggled, Wembley whispered to Xenos about his brilliant plan to marry into wealth. He wanted Xenos to heal Charlotte while he took the credit, thinking it would make her fall for him. When he tried convincing her himself, he learned the hard way that he was far from being a gigachad. With Wembley's dream crashing and burning, Xenos decided to try. Instead of pressuring her, he told her it was fine if she didn't want the surgery. He rambled on about how people get attached to their looks after being scared, and even teased that she'd end up looking like an old lady if she avoided treatment. Just as he was about to leave, Charlotte surprised everyone by opening her door and letting them in. Inside, Wembley babbled about her expensive photos, and when asked about her facial condition, he spoke up again. As expected, she cut him down instantly, telling him to know his place. Goldran tried once more to convince her to accept surgery, but she still refused to let a blade touch her face unless he could guarantee no scars. Annoyed, she stormed out of her room and sat on the balcony among her birds. Left with no choice, Xenos followed her. He casually tried to speak to her, but she told him to shut up. Then he noticed one of her birds was injured. Charlotte, relating to it, muttered that she wouldn't be able to touch grass again. Xenos picked up the bird and asked if she wanted it healed, and she immediately shunned him. Adamant, he asked her again, and this time Charlotte snapped, yelling that she didn't want any scars. She glared at him and demanded to know who he thought she was, and Xenos calmly called her his patient. To her shock, the injured bird she had given up on suddenly fluttered its wings and flew around. Xenos told her he didn't care if she was royalty, nobility, or a peasant, since healing patients was his job. After the bird returned to her, she asked if she would be able to fly again, and he reassured her that she could. Not long after, Charlotte was sedated in the operating room, while Xenos and Wembley prepared for surgery. Xenos mentioned that he had done a similar surgery when he was young, which made Wembley sigh in relief, thinking Xenos would take over. But Goldran told Wembley he would be performing the procedure. The boy almost wet himself since he had never done anything like it before. Xenos quickly told him to just follow his instructions and everything would be fine. Scanning Charlotte's face, Xenos carefully directed Wembley through the steps. Wembley followed along, but then he spotted the root of the odd face tangled with one of her nerves. Panicked, he asked Goldran if he should close it up and refer her for a second operation at the Royal Hospital. Goldran immediately refused, since he couldn't risk his image being tarnished. So he pressured Wembley to keep going. In his panic, Wembley accidentally cut the nerve, earning himself a harsh scolding. Alarmed, Fennel demanded to know what was wrong, and Goldran, sweating bullets, blamed Wembley while insisting they'd reconnect the nerve using health transfer magic at the Royal Hospital the next day. To everyone's surprise, Xenos calmly stepped in, saying it was no big deal. He removed the root of the odd face in one precise move and reconnected the nerve right there on the spot. After the surgery, Charlotte woke up and felt her face, relieved to see it was completely restored. She asked for Goldran, but Fennel explained that he had already left for the Royal Hospital to prepare for the upcoming elections. Remembering Xenos' words, she later learned his name from her gardener. Later at the Royal Hospital, Xenos helped haul several of Becker's bottles into the storage room. Becker showed up shortly after and learned the operation had been a success. Just as he praised Xenos for impressing Goldran, Wembley came running in to announce that they had been invited to one of Goldran's dinner parties. Becker immediately praised Xenos again for pushing their plan forward, while teased Wembley until he snapped back at her. Before storming off, Wembley told Xenos to meet him in the lobby that evening for the party. After he left, Becker congratulated Xenos once more, saying he was glad Xenos had taken the risk because no one had ever been invited to one of Goldran's parties this fast. At the party, Goldran addressed the guests and his followers, reminding them that the current director of the Royal Hospital would be retiring soon. He made it clear that with the votes and backing of one of the 7 nobles, he was the most likely candidate to take the position. After his speech, Wembley started gassing the professor and then tried to act buddy-buddy with Xenos and Lily, but both of them gave him the cold shoulder. Lily cut in and asked why he hadn't invited saying he clearly failed to bring any hotties, so Wembley scoffed at her, claiming Umman's plots weren't good enough. To kick things off, Goldran raised a toast to everyone, calling them the chosen ones among his followers. While the others enjoyed the party, Xenos and Lily started socializing, dating for information about a Fred, who had gone missing after a similar party. Their search led them to Bonds, the drunkard secretary, who was the last person seen with a Fred. As they talked, Xenos couldn't help but think it was weird that a guy like Bonds was Goldran's first secretary. Lily pushed a little, asking how Bonds even got the role, but Bonds ignored her and walked away. Suspicious, Lily grabbed more bottles and decided to get him drunk enough to spill his secrets, something she had picked up from Carmilla. After a few rounds, Bonds was hammered and began rambling about his past. Seeing the opening, Xenos asked him about a Fred. When Bonds struggled to remember, Xenos took him outside, trying to recreate the same scenario a Fred had been in. Along the way, Bonds dropped his bottle and started recounting an incident from 13 years ago. Mistaking Xenos for Goldran, he let slip that Fennel had backed Goldran during an explosion all those years ago. But just as he was about to reveal the important part, Bonds passed out cold. Back inside, Lily asked if Xenos was done gathering info. He admitted he still felt like he was missing something. Out of nowhere, Carmilla appeared and proudly announced she had pieced everything together just by listening to Bonds' ramblings. Xenos praised her at first, but quickly realized she was just messing with them again. Meanwhile, at the underground clinic, the trio of clan girls was busy arguing over why they all kept showing up every day. Their bickering was interrupted when Zofia's brother staggered in, covered in blood. He explained that one of their fellow beastkin had been badly injured in an accident. Zofia asked when Xenos would be back, but the others warned her that it might be too late by then and insisted they take the victim to him. At first, Zofia refused, saying Xenos was undercover and they couldn't risk blowing his identity. But after they reminded her that Xenos would be furious if he found out she didn't tell him, she caved and agreed, offering to pay double the usual fee for treatment. Back at Goldran's party, Carmilla finally dropped the jokes and suggested a theory that Goldran might have faked sating the noble. Xenos tried to process what she meant, but Lily's inner Sherlock kicked in. She pieced together that Bonds must have witnessed the incident, and that's how he blackmailed his way into being Goldran's secretary. Later, he probably let something slip to a Fred, which could explain why a Fred vanished, afraid Bonds would remember what he had said. Suddenly, Wembley reappeared and whisked Lily away to introduce her to some big shots at the party. Left alone with Carmilla, Xenos shared his own theory. He suspected Goldran had used life transfer magic during the explosion 13 years ago, healing Fennel by draining the life force from the injured victims. If a Fred had been one of the survivors, that could mean he disappeared because he wanted revenge. With that thought, Xenos thanked Carmilla for her help. She turned away with her usual tsundere attitude, saying she only did it to pay him back for the whole Zombie King mess. When Xenos joined the others, he found them on the balcony, watching Umman argue with the guards at the entrance. She was asking to see him, but they blocked her way, saying she had no invite and couldn't interrupt Goldran's party. Suddenly, the trio of beast folk showed up with one of their kin injured. Goldran immediately ordered his guards to throw them out, but Linga bulldozed through them like bowling pins, and the group stormed in, demanding Xenos. The moment Zofia saw him, she apologized for blowing his cover and begged him to help heal her kindred. Without hesitation, Xenos made up his mind to help shocking Goldran, who warned him not to waste his chance of becoming an elite. But Xenos didn't care. He simply said he was a healer, grabbed Lily, and walked off toward the demi-humans. Fuming, Goldran called him a fool and vowed he'd never work as a healer again. He turned to Wembley, asking if he behaved differently, but Wembley shocked everyone by following Xenos' path instead. He loudly declared he was leaving Goldran's faction, then rushed after Xenos, only to find the treatment already finished. Frustrated, Wembley groaned that he might be a useless idiot, but Omen approached and told him that she respected his choice regardless. Zenos then introduced Wembley to the others as his pesky little brother. The next day, Zenos briefed Becker and Omen about everything he'd learned on Goldran and his suspicions about Afred. Becker revealed that Afred had once mentioned being caught in a major when he was young. With Goldran about to be sworn in as director the next day, Becker suspected Afred might finally make his move, thanking Zenos for everything so far. Becker told him he'd need to stay another day to finish paperwork. By then, he promised he'd also give Zenos more information about his teacher. That evening, Omen and Wembley showed up at Zenos' dorm for a small going-away party. Wembley got tipsy on liquor and sulked when he learned the truth that Zenos was an underground healer, as he whined about losing Zenos by his side. Carmilla appeared. Wembley blinked, thinking it was just the alcohol messing with him. Omen nearly lost it, but Zenos calmed her, saying Carmilla had a good heart. Later that night, after the party, Zenos confided in Carmilla. Despite being from the slums, he told her, Omen and Wembley never treated him like dirt. Parting with them left him feeling heady. Carmilla reminded him that this was just part of being human. The following day, as Zenos prepared to leave, Omen showed him a letter that Becker had written, detailing his master's information. When they went to Becker's office to fetch it, they stumbled on an old photo, showing Goldran healing Fennel by stealing the life force of the wounded around him. Meanwhile, back at the party, Goldran and all the attendees lay unconscious. Minutes before the incident, Goldran and his faction were at his inauguration, and Fennel congratulated him on his success. Goldran then recalled how he came across Fennel, who got caught up in an explosion at the magic tool factory, as he healed the noble with his life transfer magic by siphoning the life force of other injured people around him. Bonds captured the incident and used it to earn his living. At the event, Becker showed up with a drink to congratulate Goldran on becoming a director. He poured Goldran a drink while the new director spoke on how Zenos disappointed him for choosing to heal demi-humans, insisting that not all lives had equal value. Shortly after, Fennel almost narrated how Goldran saved him in the past, but Goldran politely asked him to skip the subject. He then shared a toast with his faction and blacked out at the same time. Omen recalled Becker visiting Bonds the night before, and as they went through the picture, she spotted Afred and Becker's fiancée as victims of the explosion. Currently, Goldran woke up and found all of his supporters unconscious. He saw Becker, who informed him that he got everyone poisoned and it would take an hour for them to pass on. Becker then revealed that he planned to recreate what happened 13 years ago, and with Zenos' help, he had been able to follow a lead. All he had to do was get Bonds intoxicated enough with the help of his medicine to learn what had happened, and he coincidentally found a photo of the incident. Becker then informed him that Afred and his fiancée were victims of the explosion. He told Goldran that he had enough strength to use health transfer magic, and with the number of lives present, he could manage to stall the poison's progression. Becker then asked him who he would choose to sacrifice and who he would save. After giving him the chance to pick, Goldran asked Becker for the antidote, promising not to punish him severely once everything was over. But Becker shocked him by gulping the poison. Becker then joined the set of people Goldran was to choose from, saying it was left for him to save his life if he thought he had an antidote. Left with a lot of choices, Goldran started by siphoning others' life force to save himself. Becker then questioned Goldran's choice, reminding him that he had the most life force out of everyone in the room, but Goldran pointed out that he came first before any other person. He immediately argued that all lives weren't equal and compared them to coins whose values varied based on their nature. Suddenly, Becker started coughing up blood, and the students rushed into the hall. Upon seeing the mess he made, Omen asked him why, and he told her how he lost his fiancée 13 years ago to the factory explosion. He was driven to the point of revenge after learning from Afred that his fiancée didn't die just from the accident, but also from the effect of Goldran's magic. Zenos realized the reason he was hired was to get evidence, but still, Becker couldn't wait any longer, so he took matters into his own hands. Annoyed, Wembley yelled at him and sympathized with his loss. He also agreed with Goldran being a huge load of garbage, but he didn't believe that poisoning others was the best way to handle things, since healers were meant to save people. After listening to him, Zenos reminded Becker of the thought-provoking question he asked him back then and told him he'd pick all the coins. Surprised, Becker asked Zenos if he planned to save everybody, and he affirmed, even though it wouldn't benefit him, vowing not to let Becker become a mass murderer under normal conditions. Zenos was supposed to know the toxicity of the poison to help with the quick recovery, but seeing how Becker wouldn't make it if he continued asking, Zenos massively healed the crowd. He chose to endure the strain of keeping the spell up long enough until the toxins left them. After the rigorous effort, all but Goldran recovered from the poison. Goldran then ordered Xenos to heal him, but Xenos reminded him that he wasn't under his faction and would need to pay for his service. Goldran's followers refused to heal their boss after realizing that he had tried to take their lives to save himself. Xenos dropped an outrageous bill that even Goldran found unreasonable, but after remembering his life was threatened, the geezer agreed to it. Unfortunately for him, Fennel angrily told him that they would discuss what he had done in detail later. The next day, Xenos and Umin visited Becker, who had been detained by the royal guards. Krishna showed up, thinking Xenos used Becker as an excuse to see her, but he burst her bubble and thanked her for setting up the meeting. After that, Umin asked if Becker had poisoned the wine, and he informed them that he had prepared a drug that would only temporarily paralyze the body. He had intended to trick Goldran into thinking it was a lethal toxin, but when he tested the medicine, he realized it was tampered with. He suspected Fred to be the mastermind and believed he must have joined the crowd while pretending to take a dose of the poison. Omen immediately tried to justify Becker's actions, but he disagreed, pointing out his flaw in choosing to carry on with the plan after realizing the wine had been tampered with. Krishna then assured them not to worry, saying she could use her authority as vice captain to get Becker released. He agreed with her, and just before leaving the room, Becker told Xenos to watch out for Fred because it was mysterious how he had managed to survive the explosion incident, and yet he still messed with his plans. As usual, Xenos vowed to hit Fred with the bill for all the trouble he had caused so far. With the healers gone, Krishna told Becker that she was jealous that Xenos had come to visit him and not her. He explained that he had done it for Umin's sake, and because of how precarious her situation was, he was trying to clear his name for her, Krishna. Surprised at how far Xenos was willing to go for Umin, learned from Becker that Xenos treated all lives equally, somewhere else. The guide spoke about how Xenos had interfered with his plans to gather more data on human behavior. The wind blew off his hoodie, revealing that he was afraid, but not completely. He praised Fred's body, saying he would be using it a bit longer. The following day, Xenos and Lily bid Umin and Wembley farewell before departing for the slums. On their way home, Xenos treated some injured folks, and by the time they got to the underground clinic, the Treo Beastkin happily welcomed them. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you've watched up to this point, let's confuse the fake anime watchers by commenting on who is the hottest guy in the anime. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel, and give me 10k likes to all post unplotted. Also, if you're into anime recaps like this, check out the next video with lots of baby oil. Peace.